Hello. Today we are going to be talking about voltage-controlled oscillators in the context of a Eurorack modular synthesizer. These concepts can be applied to any type of sound synthesis and any normal synthesizer. If you don't know what a Eurorack modular synth is, you can watch this introductory video up in one of those corners where I talk about Eurorack modular synthesis in a beginner-friendly introductory sense, which is great. So, a voltage-controlled oscillator is going to be what generates our waveform, which is going to be the fundamental basis of our patch. It's going to be the sound that we are essentially manipulating or, throwing effects on, but it's going to be the basis of the patch, the fundamental sound that we are getting. A voltage-controlled oscillator is an electronic oscillator whose pitch or frequency is controlled by an input voltage, and that will ultimately give us the ability to use it in a musical sense where we send it varying voltage and it changes the pitch, to put a string of very pretty melodic frequencies together. And that's great. There are different types of Eurorack VCOs. Some are more specific in their attempt to give you a certain characteristic of sound, such as this SY 0.5, which is a drum module, and its function is to provide us with percussive sounds, and it attempts to give us drum adjacent sounds. And we can just listen to some of that right now, just to hear what I'm talking about. Okay, so this is the SY 0.5. This is the drum module here. And like I said, its characteristic is to give us drum sounds or more percussive sounds. Now, this VCO works by getting a trigger input, which is a gate signal, which is an on or off signal. It's only two states, on or off. And when this trigger gets an on, that will hit the, that will essentially make it play the drum sound. So right now, this module right here, if I click this button, see that lights up, that sends a gate signal. That's on, off, on, off. So if we send that drum module a gate signal, it's going to hit. And we can hear it. We can hear it when it does that. Isn't that cool? But you know what? I don't like to keep clicking that. So what we're going to do is we are going to take the gate from the cells here, and that gate triggers whenever you move one of these cells. And we are going to use an LFO right here off of the chips to move through the cells. So we can just get a steady beat. We'll go out of the faster one. There we go. And now I can start changing these parameters to try to get more percussive sounds. And you can hear that's kind of like a tom sound. It's kind of like a kick. Got like a nice kick sound. This will let us go through the different modes. Maybe like a snare or like hi-hat. But yeah, more percussive sounds. That is the purpose of this VCO. And also the PLAITS, which gives us 16 unique different models of sounds that all have their own unique characteristics that we can control with these four knobs on the VCO right here. And we can also briefly listen to some of those as well. Now, the PLAITS here, like I said, has 16 different modes. or models. And you can change the characteristic of the sound from these parameters right here. And to cycle through the modes, you have these 8 and these 8. But this video is going to be more focused on explaining more traditional oscillators that provide us with only our fundamental waveforms. Now you may be asking, what is a fundamental waveform? Well, we have sine waves, triangle waves, square waves, and sawtooth waves. And each different type of those waveforms will give you a unique timbre or characteristic of the sound. And when you start adding these waveforms together, you have a lot of control over the sound that you're trying to generate and the sound that you're trying to make or the sound you're trying to go for. So now let's start by just listening to each of those fundamental waveforms. So this is our VCO that we are going to be getting our waveforms from. This is the A111 quad VCO by Doepfer. It's great. I got 4 individual VCOs here, each with a triangle, a square, and sawtooth waveform output. This one doesn't have a sine wave, but that's fine because we can get a sine wave from a triangle wave put through a filter. But first, let's just listen to that triangle wave. We can't hear it yet because I have to turn it up. There we go. Do you hear that? There is our triangle wave. Now let's listen to a square wave. Now you hear there's a lot higher frequencies or a lot higher harmonics within the square wave. And now let's listen to the sawtooth wave. Nice. Hell yeah. And now let's actually listen to the triangle wave again, but this time I'm going to put it through a filter, so it will essentially be more like a sine wave. Come on. There we go. It's pretty low, but if we can increase the frequency, there we go. And it's open all the way, but if I put the filter on it, you can see there's your sine wave right there. Hell yeah. Now let's get that out of there. We're going to go back to our triangle wave. But that was just explaining how you can get a sine wave from just a triangle wave. If that's all you have. If you just have triangle, square, and sawtooth. Okay. So on our VCO here and on most VCOs, you will have something that says, if it says like 1 volt or 1V, or sometimes it'll say V/oct, stands for voltage per octave, which means that every increase in voltage, every 1 volt increase will increase the frequency of the oscillator by 1 octave. Now, I have a MIDI keyboard right here that has a pitch output that I can plug into this CV control voltage input 1 volt per octave on this oscillator right here. And that'll allow me to control the pitch of the oscillator with my keyboard. Nice. And that's how you can become, or you can get more musical with your oscillator. And that's essentially how you're going to use those voices, or how you're going to change the pitch of those voices with an external instrument. The keyboard I'm using to change the pitch of the oscillator is the Arturia Keystep 37. One of the reasons I got this keyboard is because it has control voltage pitch outputs already on the keyboard. So as long as it's powered, if I plug that control voltage pitch output, which is on the back of the keyboard, into there, I can immediately just use it as like a normal keyboard. And it's working like a traditional synthesizer with a keyboard. And that's great. So those were just our fundamental waveforms. But now, let's listen to what happens when we start combining waveforms. So we are going to combine a triangle wave with a square wave. So if we plug a square wave out of that, and we're going to plug that into our oscilloscope. That's what this is called. This is an oscilloscope. And let me just put these waveforms, separate them out so that we see our triangle wave, square wave, and then we are going to see the combined wave as well of both the triangle and square wave. So right now we can't hear that square wave yet because we have to take it out of here and put it into our VCA. There we go. Now we can hear the square wave. Sounds cool, sounds interesting. And now let's see what that waveform looks like. So we're gonna plug that into 3. Gonna turn 3 on. Look at how fucking big that is. There we go. And let me just continue. That's not what it sounds like. This is what it sounds like. There we go. Okay, so here we have the green wave on top, is our triangle wave. The blue waveform right here is our square wave, and the red one is the combination of the two. So you can see how the waveform is changing the more. So now it's just that second, just the square wave. Now I'm turning up the triangle wave, and you can see that waveform is changing. We are going to increase or decrease the time here so we can see it more. And that's pretty cool, that's pretty interesting. But instead of getting this square wave from the first oscillator, which pitch is being controlled by the keyboard right here, we're going to get it from the second oscillator, where the pitch is being controlled independently from our keyboard. We're going to turn that down and listen to that. And you can see how combining those two waveforms gives us a unique waveform. Now let's try combining the sawtooth wave with the square wave. And maybe let's try increasing the frequency of that square wave. And you know what? Instead of controlling just the pitch of the first oscillator, this module right here is great because down here, if we plug our control voltage into the master voltage per octave down here, it will control the pitch of every single oscillator. And there we go, that's looking way more unique. Look at that. Let's do sawtooth and triangle. That sounds nice. Nice. And you know what? We can even combine another one. Let's combine all three. So we have a triangle or sawtooth coming out of the green one, triangle coming out of the blue, the red is the combined waveform. But let's get a square coming out of, so now our red one will be our square wave. And let's shrink that. Move that right there. And now our yellow one is going to be our combined waveform. And we have to plug that in there. This goes into 4. That'll be the combined waveform of the triangle, sawtooth. There we go. And square. So sawtooth, triangle, square, combined of all 3. And we can adjust the pitch of each of these oscillators independently of one another. But the relative pitch of all of them are being controlled by our keyboard here. So we can combine them until we get a sound we like. Can change the volume until we get a sound we like. That sounds pretty cool. Look at that. Look at that. Hell yeah. All right, very cool. Now, some other things to note about VCOs is that sometimes VCOs will have the ability to perform frequency modulation. That's what this mod input is doing. The X stands for exponential frequency modulation. The LM/PM is linear modulation, linear frequency modulation. So when we put a voltage input into here, that is going to modulate the frequency of the oscillator. So we are going to send an LFO, which stands for low frequency oscillator, which is just like these oscillators, except it is normally below 20 hertz. Sometimes it can get above 20 hertz, but normally just below 20 hertz. And I'm gonna make a video about LFOs in the future. Just if you don't know anything about LFOs, it's a slow oscillating waveform. And we're going to hear its effect on the pitch here. You see how it's affecting the pitch right there? And the amount it's affecting the pitch is going to be by this knob right here. And I'm going to make an in-depth video on all of these modules, like I said, in the future. I'm just briefly summarizing what a VCO is and its function in a modular synth. So forgive me if I'm just skipping over some of these concepts or if they're not very familiar to you right now. I promise they will be in the future. But frequency modulation is cool because if we give it, let's say a non-LFO frequency, let's send that mod signal, our normal oscillation signal, our triangle wave here, we can get some very interesting changes to the characteristic of the sound. There we go. And look at that. Very different texture than this. But yes, that frequency mod is another way that you can change the texture or the timbral characteristics of an oscillator. Well, hopefully this was beneficial in maybe more so understanding what a VCO is and how it's used in a modular synth. Like I said, I'm going to be going over all of these modules in depth in like reviews and just in-depth tutorials on what they are and how to use them. Forgive me if I've just briefly gone over some things that you probably maybe just don't understand if you're a beginner getting into this. This was more so just to understand what VCOs are, that they're used to generate noise and sound. And yeah, we'll stick around, because I'm going to be making more. Next one I'll probably make is going over, I think, VCAs more and the usefulness of VCAs in a system. And then we'll go over VCFs. And then we're going to go over probably envelope generators and having envelopes and what envelopes are. And then maybe LFOs. And maybe then I'll get into doing the tutorials, because then I'll have covered all of the kind of modular synth fundamentals there. All right, well, thank you. If you like it, give this video a thumbs up, subscribe, do anything. You don't have to, though. Just do whatever you want. All right, peace.